Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios. This is episode number 49, and joining me as always is...
Trace Trylko. Hello, everyone. Andrew, it is game week.
How exciting is that?
It's pretty exciting.
We've been waiting for this.
We've been talking about this for months now. It's finally here.
Finally, it is here. It's an awesome feeling.
And we're going to help folks get into game week with a couple of interviews.
Yeah, we have Pete Pelegrin, who is the FIU football analyst on the radio for them. He's joining us a little later. And
you spoke with him and broke down the Golden Panthers.
And then you spoke with Tom James.
Tom James, former UCF alum, taking a big picture look at the program from doing radio up in north central Florida. So he's got a bit of a different angle on things.
But he does, what's the show?
Southern Pigskin Tonight.
Yeah, Southern Pigskin
syndicated college football program on the radio.
That's cool. Yeah, those two people should give us a lot of insight. Today the depth chart came out. There's a bunch of stuff going on. I have an announcement to make, though, and this is exciting.
Dun, dun, dun.
I should have had some kind of music.
Breaking music?
Yeah, something from Knightline. I could have got the thing from Knightline on the, Anyway, Kyle Israel will join us next week, starting next week, actually, because it's going to be a thing that he's going to do for every game. He's going to help us break down the game from the week before.
Former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel.
Yeah, that's awesome.
In the house.
That's like having Terry Bradshaw or something.
Yeah, who's on Southern Pigskin Tonight.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's pretty
but still,
cool.
Yeah,
Kyle's
it's awesome. So thank you, Kyle Israel, for doing that, and it's going to be really exciting because I think that he can give us, even more insight into what's going on out there and things that he saw and everything. So,
and the other way we're getting ready for the start of the season, there will be some editing on Sunday night for those of you who are wondering on our overtime that is coming in a couple of days.
Yeah, and we are working on that. We're working on it. We're working on it
feverishly.
So that will be coming out on YouTube on Tuesday evening is what I'm going to say. I'm not going to make it as late as I normally put the podcast out, but I'm going to say Tuesday evening.
And that will include interviews with players on both sides of the ball and head coach George O'Leary, and get you right in the mood. Watch that. You'll have what you need.
Absolutely. It's going to be great. So it's game week, like you said earlier. That's
Thursday.
Absolutely awesome.
6 o'clock at the Bright House, where UCF has done pretty darn well in season openers since moving into the new stadium.
UCF has won 7 straight home openers and is 23-13 overall in season openers.
But really good of late.
Yeah,
really good of late.
And they have 5-game winning streak against in-state schools, so that's good. Hopefully we don't mess that up.
True. No, that's...
FIU could be a formidable opponent, though. They could be.
We'll have predictions in a few moments, but I don't know that I'm using the word formidable.
Well, I was looking for a big word.
That is a big word.
Yeah, it's a big word for me. I try to not use the big words. Also, it will be the debut of the Carl Black and Gold Cabana.
All right, can we just talk about the X's and O's on both sides of the ball and the depth chart?
A depth chart did come out today.
Any surprises as you glance over it?
I'm not surprised by anything, really. A couple, things that I was hoping would be there and are not. I was hoping for a couple of the freshmen to get on as starters.
But yet there are some freshmen.
There are a couple.
Yeah.
There are a couple. One of those that I was hoping, I really was hoping Tyler Hudanik would step up and be on that offensive line at the right guard position.
Right? I mean, maybe that's a sign of strength.
Yeah, he's young. He's on the depth chart. He's number 2. So
he's going to see playing time.
Yeah, he's not going to, not going to be redshirted this year. I also was hoping Cameron Stewart maybe would make it into the wide receiver ranks, which Tristan Payton did, which is cool. He was one of the most highly touted recruits anyway that we had.
That's not the only change, right? There was another depth chart change at wide receiver.
Yeah, Nick Patty is up there pretty high, actually. He's the 3rd wide receiver.
We mentioned this last week. I don't know. We talked when we went out to FanFest that we had an opportunity to talk to Coach Beckton, and he was big on
Nick Patty. Yeah. So he's in there. So I guess let's just talk about this from the top. Let's do that. So for quarterbacks, and this
Who's it going to be? Okay, no drama there.
Well, not unlike last year, Justin Holman has been given the keys to the UCF offense, which
he's not been given. He's earned.
Well, earned and given, because
he's a leader on this team.
I think he probably earned it last year as well, but he was not given the keys to Daddy's, Corvette. He was given the keys to the sideline golf cart last year.
For me, he was the most impressive interview that we conducted during Media Day.
Oh, absolutely.
He was poised. He was confident.
Absolutely, yeah.
Answered the questions directly. He believes
he's
in
a big
in this.
dude, too. He's taller when you're right up in talking to him 3 feet away than you would think. He's a big guy.
It's just the pads they're wearing. No, they're big.
He wasn't wearing any pads that day.
Are
I don't think they were wearing any pads.
Were they wearing
No,
they were just in jerseys.
Yeah. And you'll see that on Overtime.
Subtle plug number 2.
Subtle plug number 2. So anyway, now the number 2 on the quarterback is Tyler Harris and then Bo Schneider. We were wondering, a lot of people were speculating and wondering if Bo Schneider would be thrown into that second spot. He is listed as number 3, and I don't. They may have a walk-on quarterback as well, but anyway.
It would be nice to have some healthy leads in some of these games. FIU, Furman come to mind, where your backup quarterback could get some playing time.
Absolutely. So that will be Tyler Harris. And then to running back, Will Stanback, Dontravius Wilson, Taj McGowan, and C.J. Jones. No big, things there, I don't think.
No surprises there.
It's pretty much...
especially with the changes in wide receiver, this is a year with this offense where we really need to see the consistent production out of the running game. And I know that wasn't just running backs. That had to do a lot with the offensive line. But we really need those guys.
Will Stanback has got to have a good year this year. I mean, it's.
I'm hoping all those injury things are behind him.
It is the most important position that's there, I think. He has to have a good year. On to the offensive line, Aaron Evans, Tariq Cook, Joey Grant, Colby Watson, and Luke Palmer.
Nice to see Joey Grant back. He had a tough year last year with all of the injury issues.
Yeah, he's had a tough couple of years, actually. So, yeah, good to see him there. I was hoping Tyler Hudanik would be up there, but he's listed as second. Wide receiver, again, we talked about a little bit. Jordan Akins, Traquan Smith, Nick Patty, Chris Johnson, Tristan Payton, and Jordan Franks. That's a tad bit interesting. With the Nick Patty being listed, number 3. I don't know if that's actually the order. I believe that it is. Traquan Smith and Jordan Akins will be the 2 top ones.
And Jordan Akins will have on Overtime. There you go. There's number 3 plug.
Yep, he's in there too. Yeah.
There's your number 3 plug.
And then tight end, Michael Campbell or Cal Bloom. It's not actually, one of the 2. It could be both. They're not listed 1 or 2.
They're going to block.
H-back, Cedric Thompson, and Aaron Conkran, who is actually a freshman as well, and we talked to him this year. He is a big dude. You'll know when he's on the field because he's huge for an H-back or fullback or whatever you want to call him.
So no real surprises.
From
what we saw, not having the opportunity with the closed practices to see much of the team, everything sort of fell pretty much as we anticipated it would.
Yeah, a little bit of defense here. Luke Adams and Thomas Niles will be the ends. Nothing real big there. They were the starters from 2014. Jemias Pittman and Lance McDowell, also top guys. Sam linebacker will be Shaquan Burkett and Dimitri Brim. And then middle linebacker Dominic Spencer or Maurice Russell. That'll be a big, big, big spot to fill. That was Terrence Plummer's spot. And that will be, I think, a little bit difficult for guys. It's always interesting because the middle linebacker is kind of like the quarterback for the defense. And it's hard to fill those shoes of a guy that was there as long as Terrence Plummer was, and did such a good job. And you'll be seeing one of those guys getting yelled at quite a bit by George O'Leary. I guarantee it. Yeah. Because I remember, and I talked to Terrence about this at one point, that George O'Leary would just rail him, and it was the first year that he was the middle linebacker, it was more, and then the second year it was a little less, and all that. It worked out good, though, for him. Mark Rucker will be the will linebacker and Earl Clark, and then cornerbacks will be Shaquille Griffin and DJ Killings. Kyle Gibson is also listed second, and Jeremy Boykins listed on the other side second. The safeties, Trey Neal and Trylko Johnson. Nothing, horribly exciting there either. That, we knew that. Trylko Johnson, we knew that he was going to be there.
Again, we talked last week. My concern is that part of the ball, the defensive secondary, with all of the changes that we've had. But, and we talked about that previously as well, you think with the guys that they've had stepping up, that it may not be as awkward a transition as we fear.
What's interesting here on the safeties thing as well, TJ Mutcherson, which is the guy from Iowa State that comes over from there. I thought that he would be maybe in one of those starting spots. They had talked about corner, so maybe he'll be the nickelback or something like that when we run a multiple corner setup, I guess. Yeah, and then Matthew Wright for kicker, both kickoffs and place kicking. Caleb Houston for the punter. Gage I can't say his last name for some reason. Gage Marcel, I think it is. Marcel is the long snapper. Caleb Houston will be the holder, and Jordan Akins will be both kickoff and punt returner, which will be interesting.
Well, they've got Jordan Akins in quite a few spots, don't they?
They do. So they're really counting on Jordan Akins, which I think they can. He is a mature guy. He's been around. He spent those 4 years playing minor league baseball. He's an adult. He's, older than a lot of these guys, and I think he can handle those things. And he ran some great kickoff and punt returns last year. That one at Penn State in Ireland that he almost ran back.
Page 7 of the media notes has the pronunciation guide. And
I probably should have looked at that.
Gage Marcel.
I think I said that at one point when I went through it 4 or 5 times.
Were there any other ones that you...
I don't know, but I need to look at page 7, I guess.
Page 7.
7
has it
here.
for you.
Okay, yeah. So,
bottom page 7. There's your pronunciation
there it
guide.
is right there. Yeah, look. How do they say... Oh, yeah, it's Delahaye. Remember we were talking about that last week? Yeah.
This pronunciation guide, quite helpful.
And Houdanik, because we talked about that with Brandon last week as well.
But from experience, when we get to news and notes later on in the program, we will not have that kind of pronunciation
Well, you
guide.
write the news and notes, so why don't you give me a pronunciation guide?
I write the news and notes during the week from the various outcomes of sporting events for the other programs.
Well, next week I expect
Expect me to balance work and everything else by looking up pronunciation. Now, and we're not trying to mispronounce. Those kids are important in all of their various programs.
Absolutely. I mean, we both have weird last names that people butcher constantly.
How do they say yours?
Oh man, I don't even want to go there.
Okay.
They say all.
Oh.
Okay, so people
Phegley.
People can't. I get that. Yes. People don't understand that P and H make an F sound. I get Phegley all the time. It's spelled Phegley if y'all don't know. So yeah, I love to say when people call me on the phone. Did you call me on the pone or the phone? Because PH makes an F sound. Phegley. Anyway.
Oh, this is the English. What time are we at on the English and the speaking lessons part of the program?
We're there.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the game coming up. We're going to have predictions in a few moments. Very interested in folks if they want to send us their predictions. This is a good opportunity to mention. Follow us on Twitter, UCF_Knightline. Like us on Facebook. Let us know what you think.
We're on Instagram as well, which is also UCF Knightline. We're not on Pinterest. Because that's kind of a girl site. Yeah, it's kind of a girl site. There? Pictures.
Are we on Snapchat? Then I'm not aware.
We're not on Snapchat. We probably need to be, though. I'll work on that. I think I'm too old for Snapchat. I don't know. Maybe not.
That's the thing that evaporates, right? In like 10 seconds?
I think so.
So how is it that we would be on Snapchat? We'd post something and then it would disappear?
You have to post the videos, I think, on Snapchat. I don't know. We'll check it out. We'll see what we can do. So I think now would be a good time to hear from Pete Pelegrin.
Yeah, you spoke with him earlier in the week, and he helps break down the Golden Panthers.
Knightline podcast deep dive into this week's opponent, FIU, features a conversation with Pete Pelegrin. Pete was the Miami Herald's FIU beat writer since the football program started in 2002 through 2009. Then Pete came to work at FIU in the same capacity in 2010, where he is FIU's radio broadcaster for football, baseball, and basketball. Pete, how you doing?
Good. How How are you?
Welcome to the Knightline podcast. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
So, UCF got the better of the Golden Panthers in their last meeting, but the Knights fans are still stinging from a loss at FIU in 2011. That was a good year for FIU, but there have been some struggles since. What's your take on the team as it enters the 2015 season?
Well, this is year 3 of Ron Turner's tenure here at FIU, and it's probably his most talented team of the first 2 seasons. It's an older, more experienced team, and defensively, this is a defense made up of juniors and seniors that last year were among the leaders in the nation, number 5 in the nation in takeaways, and 35th in the nation in, I believe, total defense and other numbers like that. So the strength of this team is certainly the defense and its front 7, the defensive line, and the linebackers.
If you could come up with any weakness, what would the weakness be?
Right now, it's the offensive line. It's a little banged up, and it's very inexperienced. There's only really one returning starter on the O-line. That's the left tackle, Diego Joseph, and then the other 4 are guys that have been with the program before, but have either redshirted or really have not played, and if they have played, maybe it's been one start. For example, center Michael Montero made one start in his first 2 years here at FIU.
So this year, the Knight fans are looking to quarterback Justin Holman to take another step in his development. Tell us about FIU's quarterback situation and FIU's keys to revving up its offense this year.
Well, the quarterback's Alex Magui was a true freshman last year, and as you might imagine with a true freshman, a lot of ups and downs with Alex. He's a sophomore now. Last year, he had to look over his shoulder because E.J. Hilliard, who was the incumbent starter, started the year as the starter until Magoo took the job from him. But then when Magoo struggled at times, Hilliard would be thrown back into the game, so it really wasn't a settled situation. This year, Magoo knows that he's the guy going in. He's the starter. Very inexperienced at the backup quarterback position with freshman and a sophomore there. Alex, his success is really, last year he had trouble hitting the deep ball. And that's not all his fault because FIU didn't really have a talented core of receivers last year where it's gotten better this year. And then again, it doesn't matter if you have Peyton Manning back there. If your offensive line can't block for you, you're going to have a tough day. And I think that's the issue with FIU starting this season is whether this offensive line can give Magoo time and open up holes for the running game, which has some very talented running backs.
Well, we know at UCF how that is. We had some offensive line issues ourselves. I think hopefully we've got those worked out with a bunch of returning people as well, so we know all about that. On the FIU sports blog, The Prowl, you wrote that the defense looks to be the strength of this year's team. Who should the Knights be focused on, and how do you think FIU will do against UCF's offense?
The 2 defensive ends, Michael Wakefield and Denzel Pirine, are preseason All-Conference USA. They are both seniors, both likely to get a look in the NFL next year if not drafted, and those guys really are really good speed, good power off the edge. Defensive tackles are also a senior lot with Lars Coote, Darian Dyson, and Leonard Washington, and Marjay Albury. So right there, a lot of depth on the defensive line that could make it tough for UCF to run the ball. And then if you get past them, FIU has 3 talented linebackers in Trayvon Williams at the Mike, Davison Coleman, and Anthony Wint. They're not the biggest guys, but they have a lot of speed and really have a nose for the ball. Really, the only inexperience for FIU defensively are the 2 safeties who are brand new because FIU's 2 safeties last year graduated, one of them Justin Halley's with the New York Giants. And right there, the safety spot is where it's a question for the defense. But other than that, this defense is pretty well stacked going into 2015. How UCF does against them, to be honest with you, I have not seen film of UCF, only from what I've read. I think teams, if they are going to put points up on this FIU defense, it may have to be over the top in challenging those safeties.
Yeah, we have a bunch of new wide receivers, so that could be an interesting matchup for sure. On special teams, what do you think of the kick and return game this year for FIU?
The kicking game, Austin Taylor's the kicker. He has improved in his first 2 years here at FIU. He shares the program record for the longest field goal made, 52 yards, which he hit his freshman year against East Carolina. His distance, that one I think was an aberration. Credit the kid, he did hit it. But his distance is between 35, 40 yards is comfortable distance. The punting game, you have Chris Ayers who's coming back. He was the short game punter last year. FIU had 2 punters last year. We had a long guy like Jose Lapizando, but he's graduated. He would do the long kicking, and Ayers was more the guy to knock it inside the 20. The return game and kick return game, you have Richard Leonard, who's probably one of the best in the country. He has 2 100-yard returns in his career at FIU. His speed is very comparable to T.Y. Hilton, who's now with the Indianapolis Colts. And luckily for UCF in 11, they really didn't have to face T.Y. because he got hurt in the first quarter of that game with FIU and had to sit out the rest of the game. He really was a decoy the rest of the game because he really couldn't run. Special teams-wise, as far as the return, Richard Leonard can put 6 on the board at any point.
You mentioned earlier that it was year 3 for head coach Ron Turner, improving from 1-11 his first year to 4-8 last year. Still, that's just 5-19. Any talk of the hot seat for Coach Turner this year, and how do you think FIU will fare in Conference USA this season?
No, I don't think there's. I don't think there's any hot seat issues there. Last year they had 4 games they lost by 3 or less points, and 3 of those 4 were in the waning minutes of the fourth quarter. So it was a young team that just needed to learn how to win, and hopefully they have that figured out this year. Conference USA is a very competitive conference, and there is no superpower. Marshall may be the closest thing to that, but last year Marshall showed that they had some holes in them, and this year Western Kentucky's the preseason darling with their quarterback Brandon Doty, who threw for over 4,500 yards last year. So those are probably the top of the conference, but they're certainly beatable, both teams, and I think it's a wide open conference race.
What does their non-conference look like besides UCF?
After UCF, they go to Indiana, play the Hoosiers, then they come home for the home opener against NC Central, which they better win that game. and they finish the non-conference schedule in October with a game at UMass.
Yeah, we have a game against Furman as well, so we better win that one. That would be quite embarrassing to lose some of those games, against the there's been some other Florida teams, though, in the past that have definitely lost some ones that they shouldn't have to smaller division teams.
Well, you don't have to go any further than FIU the last 2 years to Bethune-Cookman.
They're a great team. Bethune is, in their division of play that they play in, they're one of the top teams. So I don't think that that's really anything to hang your head on for sure. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us, taking time out of your day. We wish the best of luck to FIU in the game coming up and the rest of the season.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
So you travel a lot for work and fun. Have you ever thought about having just a little bit more insurance? TravelX gives you the peace of mind so you can take care of your family and loved ones. Click the link on our webpage. I'm just saying, accidents happen.
This is Kyle Israel, and you're listening to the Knightline podcast.
Opportunity for local Knights fans in particular to check out 2 things with George O'Leary in game week. And for years now, I've gone to the George O'Leary radio show Tuesday nights, 7 o'clock at the Recruiting Lounge. Mark Daniels hosts it. It airs on 740. Different caterer every week, so a couple of bucks, you get a meal and beverage and a dessert, and you can talk UCF football. And not a lot of people go. I've got the same folks that I sit with every week. George is very personable during this, Coach O'Leary, and he'll talk to you during commercial breaks and come up to you before. So that's an opportunity for fans locally to go out to campus and visit with Coach O'Leary. And then Lunch with George returns this week with a game, the home opener on Thursday. Typically that'll fall Fridays, though with all the different home games, I would say it typically falls Fridays, but 3 of the 6 are Fridays and 3 aren't. This one will be Wednesday, September 2 at noon. Free chicken sandwiches to the first 75 in attendance. Now that usually with faculty, staff, and students, they normally pack in a good crowd for that.
And that will be one day after our overtime on YouTube exclusively comes out.
That's plug number 4. So a couple of opportunities for local fans to, get into each and every home game and get an opportunity to go out to campus, and it's a good time.
Continuing our conversation about the UCF's upcoming season, you talked to Tom James this week.
We continue the conversation about UCF football with a 2-time Edward R. Murrow Award winner. UCF alum Tom James has been a radio and ESPN3 TV play-by-play man for Florida Gulf Coast University basketball Since 2010, Tom is a part of the weekly syndicated college football radio show Southern Pigskin Tonight. You'll find his UCF preview column on his website, TomJamesLive.com. And Tom and I logged some time many years ago with WUCF-FM. Tom, thanks for joining us. These are not the same nights that we saw when we were at UCF.
No, and Trace, we go back a long way, and that was a different era in UCF football. Who would have thunk it that UCF would be where it is today, really starting to emerge, into the big time of college football?
And talk about that a little bit. You see it from a different perspective. Talk a little bit about what you're doing now, where you are in the state, and what you think the perception is of the UCF athletics program.
Well, the respect, I think, for UCF is growing. I spend a large amount of my time in Ocala and in the Central Florida, North Central Florida area, and this is largely Gator country here. And so what people see here is the traditional powers as far as the Sunshine State goes. Florida State, Miami, they consider those the big three. It's old school. And I think it's a slow process for people to understand what UCF is about in the modern era. I mean, here's a school with one of the largest, student bodies in the entire country. It's in the South. It's in a beautiful city. It's a destination. And what's starting to happen is kids are wanting to go to UCF. Thus, the football program has, put together some big wins over the course of the last decade and a half, capped off by the big win over Louisville a couple of years ago. Then they won the Fiesta Bowl over Baylor. I think that's when people really started to take note. And people in this neck of the woods are, really starting to understand that UCF is not just that secondary school anymore. They're here to stay.
And, when we had college football writer Phil Steele on a few weeks back on the Knightline podcast, he talked about this being a program now that reloads, not rebuilds. You're out with a new column and a preview of the Knights. Is that your take as well?
No question about it. This is a place, I think the reloading thing stems from the fact that, they have put together quite the resume now, which I mentioned before with the big win in the Fiesta Bowl, big wins against traditional powers, and the fact that what we're seeing in the college football landscape across the nation is a migration south. Yes, Ohio State was able to win a national championship and finally get the Big Ten out of the doldrums, and that's on the northern end of our country. But if you really look at the history, that the SEC's dominance, the dominance by more southern schools across the country, from USC to all the way to Florida State, people are moving south as a whole. And so what you have is a place where, these are destinations for kids also to want to go to college. Gone are the days where they want to spend their football seasons in cold weather. They'd rather play in warm weather, and that's UCF is benefiting from that big time.
As I mentioned in the intro to you, you're part of the syndicated college football radio show Southern Pigskin Tonight. How often does UCF get some mention on there, or is it dominated by the Power 5 conferences?
UCF gets mentioned a lot when I'm on.
That's good.
But, I think that is part of the process. Our show is such a fabulous show. Buddy Martin, who's a very well-respected columnist and sports writer for decades. In fact, he's right now working on an autobiography for one of his longtime friends, Steve Spurrier. But Buddy sees things, Buddy is self-admittedly will say, I see things as the big three, and for me to understand that UCF is the future is hard. It's hard for him to do that. So, I've had to work on him a little bit to get UCF into the conversation. But, I liken it to the way Miami came into the big time 30 years ago. Miami was nothing when it beat Nebraska in the '83 Orange Bowl to win its first national championship. They were a secondary program at best in the country, had never had big-time success. And what happened is they burst on the scene and became a huge power in a place, in a destination where people wanted to go to school. And it was cool. And I really look at UCF as being potentially the new Miami.
No, I was just about to ask you that. You're looking at a long view back 30 years. How long until UCF can pass Miami? I mean, they've got that built-in advantage of being in a Power 5 conference, but UCF's pumping out 15,000 grads a year, 60,000 student enrollment, and as you mentioned, that migration to the South, more attention after the Fiesta Bowl win. Don't you feel, especially if Miami struggles again this season, UCF is poised here, if not top Big 4, Big 3.5 maybe. They get a little bit closer.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Getting into a Power 5 conference is going to be key. I got to believe that's going to happen because of the TV market, if nothing else, for UCF at some point. The Big 12 is, sort of dragging its feet as far as expanding. They say, well, we don't need to expand, even though that they got left out of the college football playoff last year. And a lot of people believe the reason why that happened was because they didn't have a championship game, and they need to expand to have a championship game. And one of the names that you always hear is UCF. Well, how would they expand? Where would the Big 12 go? And UCF is one of those schools that you hear, well, they might be the one to fill one of those two spots. So those are the things that have to happen, I think, for UCF to fully complete its journey into, quote-unquote, big-time college football. But as long as they keep winning, and as long as they keep having big games like they had in the Fiesta Bowl, and players like they have, like Blake Bortles, who gets picked third in the NFL draft and is off to a good start in the NFL, it's going to happen.
You mentioned the 2015 preview is on TomJamesLive.com. Talk a little bit about your assessment of the Knights. Some concern on the part of fans. We don't know what we're going to see at wide receiver, what we're going to see on defense. Still, there are some strengths. What's your take on the upcoming season?
Well, wide receiver is the big unknown. There's no question about it. A lot of losses on offense, guys getting drafted. Justin Holman, in my estimation, now a junior at quarterback, the real deal. Is he another Blake Bortles? Well, I don't know about that. Okay. But he's the real deal. And he's going to have to find a way to get his receivers to grow up fast because they are young. And I think some of the pressure offensively is going to be taken off by the fact that Will Stanback is such a great running back. And that will, I think, help keep defenses on their toes a little bit. The fact that they'll have to key on him, and that will open up wide receivers a little bit, help them get oriented, help them get, their feet wet a little bit. But that is an unknown. There's no question about it. Where UCF's biggest unknown is with the receiving core offensively.
And then on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, defensively, you look at last year. This team was locked down defensively last year, and I think they're just reloading. Yeah, they lost 7 guys on defense from the defense last year that was the 5th best defense in the country, UCF. So they were about as good as anybody last year. Now, a lot of those guys are gone, but that's where we talk about the reloading factor. The guys that were waiting in the wings last year or the new recruits, they know what they have to live up to. And, hey, UCF is bringing in quality guys every single year. So I think they know what they have to live up to. I think they're going to be flying at the ball all year long. And I don't expect all that much of a drop-off, quite honestly, defensively for George O'Leary and the UCF defense next year.
Tough tests on the road at Stanford, at South Carolina. Do you think UCF has at least a chance of splitting those two?
I definitely think they have a chance, a good chance, in both those games. You got to look at both Stanford and South Carolina are teams that they hope are kind of in a situation where they can bounce back from a down year, especially South Carolina from last year. They were a top 10 team, were the Gamecocks heading into the season last year, and it all went south for them. It was a lost year for Coach Spurrier. So they're wanting to put it back together. But, I don't know if the HBC is ready for UCF. So we'll see if the head ball coach is ready for what UCF brings to the table because, a lot of people sell UCF short still. South Carolina is ripe for the picking. And UCF in week 4, I think could go in there and pull off a huge win, another big win for the program. I mean, these two played a couple of years ago, and it was I think it was a 2-point game.
Yeah, that tough game at home, that 28-25, I think it was, the 3-point game.
3-point game, that's right. So no strangers is George O'Leary to Steve Spurrier's way of playing. So that, I think, is a very winnable game for UCF. And I don't think I'm too much of a homer by saying that. I really think that's a winnable game. I think Stanford's a winnable game, too. That might be a little tougher. It's hard to know. But in my estimation, if the Knights can come up with a split in those two games, I think that gives them a lot of confidence heading into the conference. I think that helps their psyche, especially these young guys, the young receivers. And I really feel like a 10-win season again is a possibility for UCF.
Before we let you go, tell fans how they can find you on the various social media platforms and where they can find Southern Pigskin Tonight.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Check me out on my website. It's TomJamesLive.com. And that's kind of my central point for all the things that I'm involved with, which is Florida Gulf Coast University basketball. I do ESPN3 play-by-play for them and radio as well for those guys. Southern Pigskin Tonight is heard on 8 to 10 different radio stations, I believe, in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. Terry Bradshaw is our weekly guest for us. Buddy Martin, myself, Tom Schmitz, and we talk Southern college football, and that's really what it's about. Is that? So that's heard in the North Central Florida area on Thursdays and Friday nights, and I do odds and ends of other play-by-play stuff as well, doing some documentary work down in Southwest Florida for FGCU basketball too. We have another documentary ready to launch here in November on the Florida Gulf Coast women's basketball team. So we've done a series of those.
Very good, and I
try to keep busy.
Be sure to keep pumping up UCF in North Central Florida for us, okay?
You never have to worry about that, my man.
Tom James joining us. Thanks so much.
You got it. Thank you guys for having me. Go Knights.
So, you know what they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. We don't need to know about your fun-filled weekend in the City of Sin, but we hope you'll click the ad on our website. It's right there to the left, the one that screams you have to save up to 50% off your next trip to Vegas. Just click on the ad and we promise never to talk about what happened in Vegas.
This is Brandon Helwig, publisher of UCFsports.com, and you are listening to the UCF Knightline podcast.
A couple weeks ago, we went game by game, got a sense of the season, made some predictions, and we said we would revisit it in the week before the season opener. I think you went with UCF being 10-2. Any change for you?
Nope, no change. I'm going to stay with that. Losses being at Temple and at Stanford.
Yeah, that's the one you really think we're going to get killed in, is the Stanford. I had initially thought that the 10-2, but then I went back, and I'm going 9-3. Stanford loss, South Carolina loss. In my heart, can I believe UCF can win that? Yeah, I want to believe UCF can win that. Yeah, it's a road game and an SEC opponent. I think that's tough. And the Halloween night at Cincinnati. I don't know that it necessarily costs UCF the AAC title, but I think that may be a tough spot for UCF in a primetime game at Cincinnati. So I'm gonna go with 9-3.
Okay, let's do predictions for this week.
UCF wins. There's no question there, and fire up the suicide hotline if that doesn't happen.
Your score?
I'm going to go something like 37-13. Last time we played FIU down there in Miami, I think it was like 38-0, a real lackluster game. But I think George O'Leary's teams don't win 62-3. He'll have a lot of substitution. A lot of people will see. Hopefully it's not any sort of tight game going into the fourth quarter. He gives people an opportunity, shuffles people in and out. No injuries. You always hope for that. And then with it being a Thursday game, a couple extra days to prepare for Stanford. I don't think anybody's going to be looking ahead with that season opener. So 37-13.
I'm going to say 21-10.
Close.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little closer than you think.
So you would...
I think that
you mentioned Vegas earlier. We had the Vegas spot. So you'd take the 16.5, 17 points, and you'd take FIU with the points.
I don't know what they're saying? What are they saying in Vegas?
16.5 to 17, depending on the line you look at.
Okay,
right around there.
So yeah, I'll just 21-10. I think that's what it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be a big blowout. I think that our guys still need to get their feet under them, and this will be the first. We've talked about this before. It's the first time that they've played anybody besides themselves. So there's going to be huge mistakes made. I think that's the way that it's going to turn out.
All right, we will revisit these next week and see who was closest. I'm comforted by the fact that you're almost always wrong on predictions.
Yeah, probably.
So,
whatever.
I'd like
It's
you to
true.
be wrong about that being close.
It's true. Yeah, I hope it's not. I hope it's 62-10 or 3.
Not typical of a George O'Leary coach team.
Except when we play Connecticut every once in a while. Well, last year we didn't do that against Connecticut,
it didn't
but
happen
the year
last
before.
It didn't happen last year.
We need to do it again and take that little trophy that they made.
I can't wait for that trophy
yeah.
week. Civil Conflict Week.
I think
we need an opening for Civil Conflict Week.
It's going to be the sound of Civil War.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that. All right, some NFL news. Blake Bortles had a heck of a game the other night.
Yeah, as the preseason continues in the NFL. Final stats for him at the Jaguars homepage. 20 of 29, 245 yards and a touchdown. What the part I like here is he was their leading rusher, too.
Yeah.
4 carries for 38 yards, including a long of 12. Not as impressive. Storm Johnson, 2 carries, minus 3 yards. So he had 3 less yards than you did.
Yeah, and he
made it through the cuts. Make it.
He made it through the first round of cut, so that's good. There was some other Perryman, of course, has not played.
That's starting to become concerning.
Yeah, and they've made statements about it that I don't think that he's going to be ready for the season.
He hasn't gotten the reps he needs.
He hasn't been out there at all, so that sucks for him. I don't know. He must be injured more than they're letting on with a knee, I believe it is. Rennell Hall had a good game the other night against, I can't remember who they were playing. But
he is really trying to make the most of the opportunity.
He had punt returns, kick returns, he alternated kick returns, and he ran one back to the 30, and honestly, a couple more blocks there and he could have taken it to the house. He got pushed off on the sideline. He did drop some passes. I'm not sure what his stats were there. Kamar Aiken was all over the media this week because one of the Washington Redskins, I can't remember who that was, but tackled him in a brutal fashion. It's kind of body
If you
slammed.
haven't seen the video,
don't.
It's unbelievably. I mean, you just cringe.
You cringe because he easily could have had his neck broken, to be honest.
No
with you
doubt
on
about
that.
it.
And that's why Harbaugh got in Jay Gruden's face after that, and then Steve Smith got kicked out, and it was a big deal. Nobody should ever hit anybody like that. It wasn't a football hit. It was a worldwide or WWE kind of thing, and it has no place in football whatsoever.
Absolutely not. Received in the mail my ESPN the magazine with its NFL breakdown. Got the Jags in 4th, only projecting like 5 wins for them, and this is the part they write off the top. A sampling of opinion on Blake Bortles. Quote, "I'm not feeling it," one coach says. Another coach says he looked lost. And then they write, and now the good news. According to one personnel director, quote, "For the beating he was taking, he was pretty poised about it." Really, they write, the problems in Jacksonville are so widespread, 26th in both points and yards allowed in 2014, that it's unfair to bury Bortles, even if he did have the 5th lowest quarterback rating for a rookie since 2006. So there are other things. They need more pieces, but obviously you want to see growth from Blake Bortles in year 2, and he's acknowledged that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And he, if you watched the other night at all, if any of y'all watched, he kind of, to me, looked like the guy that played, his last year here at UCF. Just, making those third down, throws, just throwing them, right in there, throwing them fast and on the button, It was good to see him playing like that. It's something that we haven't seen from him in the NFL, but I think this game he definitely had it going back again.
So your UCF players still there, hanging on. I don't know if Storm Johnson's going to make it, but there seems to be opportunities for other guys to make starting rosters, and so far so good as cuts begin to happen now in the NFL halfway through the preseason.
Yeah, I know Terrence Plummer's having a good year up there in Washington. I'm not sure what happened in the game because I think the only coverage really was that that horrible tackle that happened there on Kamar Aiken. So anyway, we will find out a little bit more about that. I do need to update the webpage as well with some moves that people have made. Time for news and notes. UCF women's soccer scored 3 first-half goals at Miami on Sunday, only to give up 3 second-half goals to the Hurricanes.
It's unbelievable on both sides of that. That's almost 6 goals.
Almost as bad as Orlando City.
No, that's
UCF
not good.
senior Ashley Spivey netted the game-winning goal in double overtime, and UCF improved to 3-1. Next up, Ole Miss on September 4th.
Host UCF Volleyball won the weekend. This is a long name for a tournament. Holiday Inn Orlando East UCF Area Invitational Championship at the venue on UCF's campus. Next up, Friday versus Drake. They're heading out to Omaha, Nebraska for the Omaha Classic.
UCF men's soccer crushed FAU 5-0 in the season opener at the UCF Soccer Stadium. Sophomore Mateus Pisalo tallied 2 goals and 2 assists. Next up, UCF travels to Florida Gulf Coast on Wednesday.
UCF men's basketball head coach Donnie Jones announced the hiring of longtime NBA assistant coach Tom Sterner as the Knights' Director of Program Development.
UCF cross-country team is back practicing. Run, run, run. The new season kicks off September 4th at the University of Tampa Classic.
UCF baseball head coach Terry Rooney announced the Knights' 19-member signing class. The new group features 10 junior college transfers, 9 freshmen. UCF junior designated hitter Matt Diorio, meantime, was tabbed one of the 2015 Alaska Summer League top 10 prospects by Baseball America. Left-hand pitcher Drew Faintich was named a perfect game top prospect in the Great Lakes Summer League.
Former UCF wide receiver and current Orlando Predators offensive coordinator Sia Burley named the Arena Football's Assistant Coach of the Year.
Congratulations to that former Knight. And again, folks, remember, have we mentioned it a time or 3 here? Overtime coming Tuesday, our football preview edition.
It is.
On YouTube.
We're going to still continue to work on that. We've got a lot of video and all that stuff to edit. It's going to be cool. There's a brand new opening that I did up. That's exciting.
That you did up.
All right, a shout out to John Swift, our very own John Swift. Got married this weekend. I saw some beautiful pictures on Facebook and stuff, so good going there for the both of you, and I hope you have a nice honeymoon and all that stuff, and hopefully John Swift will come back soon.
After his honeymoon.
Yeah.
Rejoin us.
This has been episode number 49. I'm Andrew Phegley.
I'm Trace Trylko. Beat FIU. Go Knights.
Charge on.
UCF charge on to the field. With our spirits we'll never yield. Black and gold charge right through the line. Victory is our cry. BSETO.